Good day, everyone. Welcome back again to this R programming series. Today, we'll be talking about factors in R programming. Factors in R programming language are data structures that are implemented to categorize the data or present categorical data and store it on multiple levels. So they can be stored as integers with corresponding label to every unique integer. Though factors may look similar to character vectors, they are integers and care must be taken while using them as strings, for example. The factors accept only a restricted number of distinct values. For example, a data field such as gender may contain values only from female, male, or transgender. So with this, before we start, I would like to comment that this discussions is taken and inspired from the following websites: jigs4jigs.org, and then some of which are also taken from W3 School tutorial points and other websites that helps us to come up with a very good example about factors in R. Alright, so let's go on with our discussions. So things to remember when dealing with factors are the attributes. Attributes of factors in our language, such as, let's say, x, it is the vector that needs to be converted into a factor. Labels, it is a set of distinct values which are given to the input vector x. Labels, it is a character vector corresponding to the number of labels. Exclude, this will mention all the values you want to exclude. Ordered, these logical attributes decides whether the levels are ordered. Nmax, it will decide the upper limit of the maximum number of levels. Okay, those are the attributes of factors in our language. So let's start creating a factor or factor variables in R. So the command used to create or modify a factor in R is just the function factor, while a vector as an input. So there are two steps to creating a factor. Are creating a vector first and converting the vector created into a factor using the function factor. So let's have an example. Okay, so we have, for example, variable x, okay, with the following vector values such as we have male, we have female, okay, we have another, for example, female, and finally we have male. Alright, so you'll notice there are duplications of values in this vector, such as male and females. Alright, so let's try to run, and let's try to look into the content of this vector. Okay, print x. Alright, so we have there our male, female, female, and male. Okay, so to convert this x into a factor variable, so what we are going to do is to call the function factor, and let's call it as the gender variable. Right, so we call the function factor and then the variable x. Alright, so you will notice that gender now has two levels here, okay, as seen in our environment. So we have here to print, let's print gender. Alright, so we have here, based on the data, we have male, female, female, male, and the levels in terms of factors of these values here in the vector, we have only female and male. Okay. So levels can also be predefined by the programmer or the one who is using who is doing the programming. Okay, so let's try that. So for example, we have gender as our variable. Okay, factor, let's say for example we have here male, we have, I mean female, we have male, we have male, and then we have female. Alright, so we can set also our we can set our we call this sorry, this is in a list, or rather in a what do you call this, in a vector. Okay, so we can set the levels here as the following. Okay, it could be female or transgender, and the other one is male. Alright, so here there you go. So we have now 3 levels. Let's try to look into the outcome. Okay, let's try to print now gender. There you go. So we have now 3 levels as we set here. Okay. So how do we check for a factor in in R? So the function that we need to use is that factor function. It's used to check whether the variable is a factor and return true if it is a factor. So now let us check. Assuming that we have a variable gender, for example. Okay, so we have factor. Again, we have the following values of our vector. Okay, so we have male, female, and male. Right? Okay, so we have, let's try to print whether it is a factor variable or not. So we should be expecting that these values here is a factor variable as true. Okay, yung value dapat. Alright, so let's try to run. There you go. So the gender variable is a factor variable. Okay, so another one is is the function class. So it's also used to check whether the variable is a factor, and if true, returns the word factor. Okay, so let's try to call in class instead of the term is factor. Okay, so we have class, then we call the variable gender. So we're expecting whether it is a factor variable or not. So factor if it is a factor. There you go. It returned a factor because gender is actually a factor variable now. Okay, so let's try to do accessing elements of a factor in R. So like we access elements of a vector, the same way we access the elements of a factor. If gender is a factor, then genders of I would mean accessing the ith element in the factor. Alright, so let's try to say, for example, again, we have gender with our factors. So we have, for example, male, female, and we have female, and we have male. Okay, let's try to get the element by calling the specific ith element. Let's say, for example, third. So we're expecting that it should be a female. Alright, so the output is female, correct. The third, 1, 2, 3, with 2 levels, male and female. Okay. So in other words, there are more than one element can be accessed at a time. So we can do that also. Assuming we have the same here, would like to access, okay, like to access 2 values at the same time. So we have C, list, second and the fourth value. Okay, the second and the fourth, so it should be male and female. There you go. Okay, the second female and the last is female with 2 levels such as male and female. Alright, that's how we access. Let's try to do some modifications, modifying a factor in R. So after a factor is formed, its its components can be modified, but the new values which need to be assigned must be at the predefined level. Okay, assuming that we have still the following values, the one that we did a while ago. So we have factor. Okay, so we have here male, female, female, and we have male. Okay, so we have gender. Sample the second, which is female. Let's try to modify it into male. Alright, so we say that the second, which is female here, we'll try to change that into male. Okay, so let's try to print what is in gender now. Alright, so there you go. We have now 2 male, 1 female, another 1 male here. That's how we modify the content. Okay, so for selecting all the elements of the factor gender except the ith element, gender sub I should be used. So if you want to modify a factor and add value out of predefined levels, then first modify the levels. Alright, so for example, we have still here, okay, gender as factor variables with the following lists. We have female, male, male, female. Okay. Then let's try to add a new level. Okay. Let's try to add a new level here. Let's add a new level. Okay, so we have here the command. So levels, say gender. We knew that the levels here are female and male. So we will add a new one. So C, we have here levels. Okay, gender, comma, let's say other. Okay. And so our gender third would be other. Right, so let's run. Oops. Alright. Oops. Let's try to see what's here. Oh, there you go. Okay, so let's try to run what is in gender. So in the levels we have inserted other. Alright, other. Okay, So factors in data frame. The data frame is actually, as we have discussed, is similar to a 2D array with the columns containing all the values of one variable and the arrows having one set of values from every column. There are four things to remember about data frames. First, column names are compulsory and cannot be empty. Unique names should be assigned to each row. The data frames data can be only of three types, either factor, numeric, and character types. And then the type number of data items must be present in each column. So in our language, when we create a data frame, its column is categorical data, and hence the factor is automatically created on it. So we can actually create a data frame and check if its column is a factor, right? So let's try to create a data frame. Okay, let's try to create a data frame such as the following. Let's say age, vector variables. So we have 48, 25, 52, 21, 30. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have here, we have here, sorry, 35, 25, that's your age. So let's say, for example, run natin yan. Then we have the salary. Okay, so we have the following. Salary for that, let's say 10,200. 1, 2, sorry, 3, okay, so we have, alright, that's it. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 2 more. That's for salary. And then for gender of those, okay, we have the following. Okay, so we have male, that's female, male, right? Transgender, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, female, transgender. Okay, so that's our data frame. Okay, so take note that we have three vectors here: age, salary, and gender. So let's try to create a data frame. Let's say, for example, these are employees, emp data. Okay, we have emp data as our data frame, okay, with the following data: age, salary, and what else? Gender. Alright, there you go. Let's try to print our let's try to print our imp data. There you go. So we have here our age, we have the salaries, we have the gender of our employees. Alright, so let's try to check if gender is a factor variable. Here is the factor of our emp data $gender. Let's try. So what what does it say? False. Why? Why? Because gender over here is not yet converted into a factor variable. How are we going to do that? To check and change that our values supposed to be should become a factor variable is to convert this into a factor variable. So we say factor, go. Alright, so let's print again. Now it is the gender variable here is now a factor variable. Let's try to check the structure of our data sets now. Okay, check the structure. Command is str. Okay, imp data. There you go. So we have our age as a num, the following values: salary as a number, and gender as is a factor with 3 levels: male, female, and transgender supposed to be. Okay, let's try to look into the summary. The summary of our imp data. There you go. Age, the minimum age is 21, the maximum is 52, and the mean is 33.71. For the salary, the minimum is 10,000 and the maximum is 256,000. And you will notice in gender, there are 2 females in the data sets and 3 male with 2 transgender. Okay, so that's how we deal with factors, with vectors and data frames, and how we look into the structure at the same time the summary of our data frame with factor variables. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening, and see you again next meeting.